Well, everybody knows the talented Josh and Rafi of Form Design Studio. And I think they're going to start us off with a quote.
Yeah, hi, Linnea. We actually have two very short quotes to read to you. We had prepared a different one, but something actually someone else just shared something with us. I think maybe you should read that first.
Okay.
And we changed our program just a little bit.
So it's just a sense of what we want to talk about tonight and what we've been thinking and feeling. And this is a quote from an archaeologist, Sarah Parchak. "What is amazing to me as an archaeologist is the more and more I study, I realize we are resilient, we are creative, we are brilliant. And this is what makes us human. And that hasn't changed since we've been human."
And the other thing we wanted to share with you is lifted from something that Bill Clinton said, and he wrote it about the AIDS crisis. But in so many ways, it's really quite apropos now. And he said, "We live in a completely interdependent world, which simply means we cannot escape each other. How we respond depends in part on whether we understand this interdependence. It is not someone else's problem. This is everybody's problem." And so very much that sort of spoke to us about what this chat is kind of about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we've had a few conversations over the last couple of weeks, and it's been so thought-provoking and enlightening. And, you know, the world's turned upside down literally overnight, and we're all kind of shell-shocked, I think. But it's an opportunity. And I think, you know, it's ultimately a really good thing. So this conversation is going to be more about who do you want to be? Who do you want to become? What do you want to do post-COVID? Like, this is all putting us in a place of having to sit back and think about things a little bit more deliberately. So it's an opportunity to make positive changes and positive impacts. So I'll just kick it off and can you guys tell us, what do you know right now for sure that you will be doing differently moving forward? And what do you hope to see others doing differently?
So I just want to respond to that first by saying in the conversations that we've been having, I think it might be helpful to share some of the genesis of this conversation with this group, because we came to these topics originally starting from the idea of relationship and how special our industry is. And as practitioners who've been functioning in this industry for a long time, it's hard for us to comment on whether or not other industries enjoy the special place that relationship has in our spheres. But I do know that for ourselves, relationship is everything. That connection, that trust in other people is everything. It's how we function. And in fact, for those of you, for everybody else, Jen, Taurus, and we know each other, I think it's something like 12 years. I don't know exactly. And through many different incarnations professionally, but just that relationship remains and will continue to remain. So to answer your question, I know for sure the thing we're not going to be doing differently is that we're not going to let go of the relationships that have made our lives so rich, made our practice so rich, made our experience on this earth so rich. So you may hate us, but you're not going anywhere. But to the question of what will for sure change, I can speak for myself to say, I will never let myself fall back into the same patterns that I think I've been stuck in for a long time. And there is imagery and and there's poetry and there's thought and there's space in me that I didn't allow to be living here, that existed before. But I think I've been so driven by production and by the need to produce that I have lost sight of the value of stillness and the value of space. And I won't ever let that happen again. And I'm hoping that will inform my creative process and my business mind. But I know it will feed my soul and what I offer to the world. So that is for sure something I will never, ever, ever let happen again.
And for me, I would say that I'm going to endeavor, mostly, I think I do it pretty well in my personal life, but I don't think I do well in my professional life in not being impacted by fear at times. And I've worked really hard to try to master that sense, and I thought that I had, but I think in my thinking I was fooling myself, and there were incredible amounts of fear that were hidden by just the schedule. Before COVID, we were out of town about every 8 to 10 days. And so when you're moving that much and then trying to be with your daughter in between and your life, and you don't have time to even think about what you're feeling. And I realized there's such an incredible amount of fear leading into this, and something happened the minute that we stopped going anywhere. I just started being able to get outside and look at that fear totally differently and see all of the different places that it lived and where it was guiding me, and the great impact it was causing on my sense of self and as an artist and as a business person, and the damage that would then affect on me as a husband and as a father. And it's just something that I'm going to work harder in my morning mantras to really acknowledge that isn't something that just disappears. It's something that you have to constantly look at and embrace, but not live in.
Right.
Can we bring Vanessa in? I don't seem to be able to do that.
I just did.
Yeah, I think
Great.
here she comes. Hey, Vanessa.
There she is.
Put on your video, Vanessa.
There she. Now
And
I sound.
I think it's a question. I think the question itself is a meditative question.
And then on a practical level, I'll just say that the idea, one of the things I was afraid of, we lost our associate designer in her physical presence. She was with us for 6 years. She was our right-hand person. She thought the space that is right here that we don't live in together, she lived in and lived in. And I was scared shitless when she said she was moving back to France. And we learned we had to start working remotely because she wasn't here. And so that just became a part of our process. And we've been doing that really beautifully. And now when we can bring people back into the office, that'll be wonderful. But I also don't have that practical fear of how do we work from a distance. And of course, the fact that she was with us for 6 years and occupied that space helps. It doesn't work as easily on a creative person separate as much. But on a practical level, that's something that I feel much more comfortable about moving forward, and even in these moments.
Yeah. Hey, Vanessa.
Hi. Sorry, I didn't
anyone
realize it
else-
was live. I had to put my hair up.
Abby had to put lipstick on, I think.
Hi.
Lipstick on because I have not worn any makeup in 6 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
For us, you did it for this thing.
And I took a shower.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I did shower today. I got that in.
So
Anyway,
we're
nice to
having
meet you all. Sorry
Vanessa
to
just.
interrupt.
That's okay. Just to bring you up to speed, we're talking about making this whole crazy situation, turning it into an opportunity and finding within ourselves and as a community what we're going to do moving forward
Cool.
better. So,
Fantastic.
does anyone else have anything to say about that? Has anyone thought about, changes they want to make and patterns they want to break or ways of thinking or being?
Okay, I'll just jump in.
Please do.
I mean, I think for me, this has been like a real time for me to think about, yes, to think about what I want to do, but also just think about how I want to run my life. And, you know, obviously trying to get myself to do all those projects that I have been putting off for ages, like cleaning out my email inbox or updating my LinkedIn, none of which have necessarily happened yet, but they're on the list of things to happen. But it's also just a different, for me, it's also being in this business is a way to think about how people will think about the idea of home in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And how the idea of home and what's important will change. And I mean, when you sit in your house, whether it's an apartment or a big house or whatever, you suddenly start to think about, wait, what do I need in this space to make me comfortable? What do I hate? And I think that we're sort of in a unique position as an industry to take advantage of. I mean, I think there will be a lot of focus on how home will be different and the things that it will need, and all those like home offices you see in some of those newer constructions. It could be like, now you see that those don't actually work the way you thought they were going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I'm making us rethink everything, and that's a good thing. It's unsettling, but it's a good thing. You had shared some images. Can you pull those up, Jen? Images of an artist. Can you tell us about this artist and how this relates to the conversation and what's happening now?
Yeah.
As
Jen, are you able to pull them up?
Oh, she's muted. There
Is
she
it
goes.
working? So I'm sharing screen. Oh wait, here it is.
There we are.
Hold on.
Yeah, I see.
I'm gonna share these. Oh, you can't do. Okay. All right, we'll share one at a time. Okay. Is that working? There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And then maybe we can make this. Oops, not that. Okay.
this is a piece from our friend of ours, Ben Storms, an artist in Belgium. He's a maker and grew up. His father, we met him through his brother, who took over the family business of selling antique building materials. They've supplied Axel Vervoort and a whole bunch of people over the years. And Carl, some of you have heard about, we have a furniture collection for Global Views, and it was inspired by meeting Carl and all of the relationships that grew when we spent almost a month in Belgium. I'm sorry, no, actually, it was a 3-week sourcing trip, but we were only in Belgium for 3 days.
And didn't you meet him by accident?
We did.
I think that's an astonishing story. That's one of the best stories of my year.
That's a good story. It's a really good story.
So I'll give the quick version. I made an itinerary of everyone that we were going to meet in Belgium, all these building material places. We went to one place. They were lovely. One of the pieces in our collection is inspired by a water well that we found there, antique stone well. And then we went to Carl. And in the process of just chatting, because we were there for a project that we didn't even have an architect for yet, and we had just decided these are some of the pieces from our Global Views collection. But we knew that we wanted a sense of energy and history and life that can only come from something that's old and has been well loved. And we wanted that to be an integral part of the house. And our client was wonderful enough to invest in this vision and sent us to Europe to find materials that ultimately made it into the project, and some of which are actually sitting in storage because we didn't find the right use, but she loved them. And we met Carl, and he couldn't believe that Americans were coming to work and shop for a project that didn't exist yet. And that reminded him of his father's relationships with many of the builders and architects that he had worked with. And so he said, "What else are you doing while you're here?" And we told him, and he said, "Cancel all of that. I'm taking you around for the next 2 days." And he did, and he introduced us to Peter and Regine van Kronenberg, who make incredible hardware, and they do all of Axel's hardware, and they become dear friends. And Eddie Donkers, this incredible plasterer who did, if you saw Kim and Kanye's house in Malibu that was on AD recent, and a cover of AD recently, he plastered that house.
And he's done work for projects of ours.
And he's worked for us, and he has a wonderful past plan. Anyway, these artisans, the way they lived in their work, and they were doing work with such an incredible amount of passion for the past and passion for the material and respect for the future and the process. And that piece of Ben's, which is a piece called Exhale, the first piece he designed was called Inhale. And he grew up in this space, grew up running and building forts between piles of rock and marble and bluestone. And so he looked at material as an artist and as a young person from a very different perspective. It was something to be played with. And as an adult, he explores form in this really beautiful way. His first table was, he put two pieces of stainless steel together and then used pressure to blow them up like a balloon. It even has a little metal twist cap that looks like a nozzle.
No, it is. That's where that's the nipple.
Right, it is, and that's the nipple that's sealed. And then he polishes it and puts a piece of rough stone, rests it on top of it to be this beautiful coffee table. And so this piece that came up in the Breccia Viola is his next piece, where he's made the pillow, but made the pillow out of stone. And what's so beautiful about that piece is it speaks to their story. His brother runs all over the world, buys these incredible materials, brings them back, doesn't know what's going to happen with them. The block of stone that Breccia Viola is in, he brought back, was sitting on the lot. We engaged him to do a large centerpiece for us out of that stone. And he had the rest of the block and didn't know what was going to happen. And Ben came in and took this block that could have been junk elsewhere, and Ben envisioned and created this incredible pillow of stone that is so beautiful. And it reminds me of a sculpture that we saw in the museum at the Villa Borghese in Italy, where remember that marble? I can't remember the name of the artist, but it was this marble with this fabric that was so soft and beautiful, and I couldn't believe it was stone.
She's laying on a divan. You know?
I know, that is exquisite.
Yeah.
And so this piece is a contemporary realization of that same perspective, to create something. I want to lie down on that piece. I want to, feel its softness.
You want to be in that room. You just want to be with it.
So this is a story of sustainability. It's a story of playfulness. It's a story of love and thought. And this just showed, it was revealed this spring, and right before everything shut down in Belgium at a fair. And Carl ended up buying it because he didn't want it to leave the family. So it has this really wonderful all-around story. And we bring it up because I think that as we think about being makers, and even as being makers, not of one-of-a-kind pieces, but of
commissioned works.
Commissioned works, and for clients, and then also for us in doing product that isn't one-off, it is going to be more mass-produced. How do we think about those things from all of these different perspectives? And I think that I said, and this out of context maybe could come off really harsh, but I'm sad for all of the loss that will happen because of this, but some of the loss might be things that were just raping the planet and taking away from the planet's ability to be sustainable, and also robbing the opportunity for people to really see quality and beauty. One of the things I hate the most of going to big markets is knowing the amount of waste that exists there, and the amount of stuff that comes in for these millions and millions of square feet to be turned into something to fet all of us and get us to want to buy it, and all of these pieces and all of the wood, and how many times you walk around and you see the same thing from 30 different perspectives.
Yeah.
And so how do we start thinking, of course, people can argue there are no new ideas, but does our interpretation of something have value and have merit? And there's just a point to start, this is a moment to start thinking deep.
Yeah, well, that goes back to the first question of what are you planning to do differently? How are you planning to change? And it comes back to a self-reflection. And I don't think we can expect that big business is going to all of a sudden grow a conscience, but we can each make our own commitments to ourselves about change, whatever that means for yourself. I mean, I'm sorry, Jen, if we're kind of going off, but
No, you're not. You're leading right in. Keep
Yes, I do.
going.
we see a lot on social media platforms and from our colleagues. People are posting lots of inspirational thoughts, and it's beautiful, and it's thought-provoking, and it's wonderful. And if we listen to Margaret Thatcher, those thoughts, they must inform our actions, which then will inform who we become. But if we don't allow those thoughts to inform our actions and we just leave them as thoughts, then we will have grown none. So in some ways, what you're talking about to me reflects back to that question of what do you plan to do differently? And if you don't know, when are you thinking you might want to start thinking about that?
And I think
And then, as you said, then actually take some action towards.
right.
Yeah.
And
Let's go back to, you were starting to touch on materials and what we're selecting and the waste. Tell us about what you were telling us the other day about the size of the building industry. This is crazy.
Interesting. So this is really interesting. And Vanessa, I know a number of you have heard us talk about this a little bit. And if you have, I'm sorry, it's sort of repetitive, but I don't think we all know in our industry just how big a power we hold. And I'm going to talk about the US only. And you can look at numbers from a lot of different perspectives. So I'm going to give you a couple of those perspectives just to think about. But the architecture industry in 2019 looked at services that were valued at about $292 billion for the year. Construction in this country looks at services that reflect 4% of the gross US GDP, being almost $1 trillion. And the construction industry has annual expenditures of more than $11 trillion annually in this country alone. And we as the creatives are all in one way or another at the helm of those choices. There are over 11 million people are employed roughly in this country in construction. And it's more than the U.S. construction companies in the U.S. Spend more than $10 trillion. So depending on what numbers you look at, this far eclipses fashion in this country as an industry. Some of the numbers are less depending on what you're looking at. So when we think about how much power we really wield to affect change, it's much more than we know. And here's the other thing that's really crazy about all of those numbers. 77% of those numbers are in the private sector.
77% of those numbers are in the private sector.
Yeah.
It was 1 to 3 trillion, not
Nope.
11. No, it's 11.
Oh, 1.3. Yeah, 1.3. But they spend more than 10. Yeah, 77% of those numbers are in the private sector.
Right.
That's an unbelievable amount of power. And so we were talking about this ourselves, Jen,
Yeah.
about the choices that we make as creatives from the start of our process. And we started talking about Fantini as a brand.
And we have Fantini here. Diego is
Muted,
a
but
Fantini guy.
yeah.
Terrific. Well, Fantini, for those of you who don't know, Fantini has an extraordinary program that it runs that's related to, and maybe Diego wants to tell us about it because I'm sure he knows way better than I, but it's related to water and clean water and sustainability. And knowing that piece of information, if you don't know, might make you choose to look there for inspiration or choose to look there as a source to begin with, because the way you as a creative, or as we as the creative industry, guide people towards other producers or other avenues that are that have a sustainable another story to them that aren't exclusively in one commercial pot. That affects enormous change. The other piece of that information that I thought was really interesting too is that 56% of the registered projects in this country are registered either with U.S. Green Building Council or LEED. And that's new as of the past 3 years.
Yeah.
So there's change coming.
Yeah. And back to the products that we select, I've always been really passionate about that. And that is the decision maker for me. If I'm choosing between 2 or 3 different brands and I hear that one has a give back component, or, just something that they do with a soul, they take great care of their employees. They are environmentally sound. That's the decision maker for me if I'm weighing. And yes, there are a lot of people who don't care and they're looking for the bottom line, the cheapest or whatever. That's really not our client though. And if they know, if it's our responsibility to provide them with that information and to educate them, because chances are they would make that same choice.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was on
an
a
opportunity comes in.
But I was watching a panel that was actually, like you mentioned, with U.S. Green Building Council and with other sustainable organizations, and they were talking about how it's basically baking into the original plans to do everything on whether it be sustainable or just getting the products that you want, getting that, they were saying that if you do it up front, then the client is much more likely to accept it and just go for it than they would if you try and change it later on. So so basically their advice was to change how you do business and present this as part of your what you're presenting to the clients in the first place.
I think you said exactly the thing, right? Change how you do business. So there we're back to that first question. What is each of us planning to do differently?
Yeah.
Well, I think what makes this conversation slightly different than we've all been a part of these panels or talked about the desire to go more green or whatever, make any kind of change, whether it be personal, business, spiritual. What really makes this different is that we're all already doing everything totally differently. This isn't like you have to start something.
Right.
We're all doing things differently right now. You don't order from Amazon without it showing up and putting on gloves or opening it and wiping it down and then waiting and washing your hands. We don't do anything the same way that we did before. Like, we don't take a piece of toilet paper without being worried, will I get more? I mean, all of those things, everything is different right now. So why not use it as an opportunity that when things can start to change, that we be conscious and thoughtful about how it changes and about how we can make all of the little choices, whether it be ordering on Amazon or this. We have a good friend who works in technology, and he's decided he wants to create the Amazon that is exclusively about being from humane.
Share his idea.
Oh my God, I can't believe I did that. Don't.
Sorry, we have a friend
Rewind.
You just violated that NDA.
Here's our friend.
He's launching a business that we're going to tell everybody when it's done.
We didn't hear anything. You cut out.
The point to be thoughtful on micro and macro levels, because we all already are doing it differently. So it's not like all those other times, like, yeah, that's a great idea, I'm going to start meditating tomorrow, but then you don't have time. And it's a great idea, but there's no reason for that now.
Amanda, will you tell us what that looks like to you? So Amanda, so in the chats, if people aren't looking, Amanda said creating a culture of health. And I could not agree more. So I'd love to hear what you think about what that looks like.
Having such an intimate, hold on.
Oh, there you are.
There you are.
I'm so excited to be having such an intimate conversation. This is so refreshing, by the way. And I love all these people. I've been taking the time while I've been home to take classes, to educate myself on topics, conversations, all these things that I just love and you don't have time for. So the one thing that I am doing is taking a class on creating a culture of health in business. And I was just so into what that means and how we can improve as an industry, personally. And for me, it's the whole gamut. It's from, you know, taking care of your employees because they're on the front lines, they're taking care of your clients, they're helping create projects, to community, you know, how can we give back to our community? How can, you know, does that mean that in taking care of our employees, we're also taking care of their families? And then, you know, it all comes back around. And then it's also product. How are we creating product? How are we packaging it? How are we, you know, disposing of it? You know, is there a give back program? Like, you're getting rid of something and you're taking something in. How can we, you know, give back to the people who can't afford things? So for me, it's the full range. It starts from the people who take care of your business to, you know, the people in manufacturing who create the products or the projects. So for me,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more myself. I think that I think the challenge is really going to be about personal responsibility, and we talked about this also in our pre this conversations, because every single one of the things that you just mentioned, if I could flip a switch and make happen, I would absolutely do it. It pains me to see how much recycling comes out of our home, right? I mean, you go to Trader Joe's and you can fill up 3 bags of recycling just with your vegetables. It's obscene. Yeah. I, as a designer, unless I change what it is that I do for a living, I can't fix that alone. And I can't implement a program about that alone. So I want to support the organizations that aren't doing that, try to go to farmers markets more for sure. But the question I'm sort of obsessed with at this time is what is in my sphere of influence bigger than what I thought was in my sphere of influence that I can flip a switch about, and that I can't let myself off the hook for any longer.
Right, because the margin of change that has impact is much, much smaller than people think. So you don't have to change your entire everything about your life and the way you live. Like, you can still wear that deodorant if you want to. I mean, it might kill you, but
I wouldn't. But okay, you go ahead and do
it. And
can I say something really fast just about that? Because I like what you're saying. One of the reasons about, or the good things about using local vendors is that it does cut down on so much waste. It cuts down on packaging. It cuts down on just transportation. Yeah, everything. It also is sometimes prohibitively expensive. So it's like, where can we find that balance of being able to use local vendors that do amazing work, but that it's still affordable once everybody tags on, you know.
Well, yeah. Yep. It's absolutely true. And one of the things that we taught our daughter very, very early on, when we boycotted Target for much longer than she thought was appropriate. And even though Target is this, and at the time they were like incredibly positive on HRC, but we were like, so like, they also gave money to someone who believes that you should kill homosexuals. So I don't care what their HRC rating is. They gave to someone who hates our family. So until they publicly apologized for it, which they didn't do until Lady Gaga wasn't going to give them her album, we then started shopping there again. But Sky was like, there's no reason for this, but we say it's your dollar is the most important vote that you have. So everywhere that we get to put our dollars and our clients' dollars that they trust us with is casting a vote for the types of businesses that we want to continue. And not every dollar can go to a perfect local sustainable business. It can't. And we're not saying that we only do that. We have a collection with Global Views. We buy from it, we work with it. We understand that not everything can happen locally. But when we're working with Global Views, we're making sure that the materials, the leathers, are definitely a byproduct of the food industry, that they're using FSC certified or equivalent woods wherever possible. And we're starting, just like we do with our projects, it's all FSC certified. So we bake that in to just like with our projects, like we don't specify anything that comes from our office that is going to be built that doesn't follow a certain standard. And that's just at the beginning. Clients don't get to choose that. It's not an upcharge or a downcharge. That's what's in the drawings. That's what gets delivered to the workrooms. That just is. And those are ways that just become a natural thing. That so when a quote comes in, it's not, you're not saying, oh, add up for green materials. You're saying, well, this is the finish. It's a runner. It's an Italian product that is completely VOC free. And you're making those comments from the beginning. And so we bake that in with them so that if somebody's buying from a Global Views product, there is a chance that somebody like us or other designers or even their team was behind it saying, even though this is being made in Vietnam, we want it to be made to the best ability. And while there will be a carbon imprint on bringing it here, there wasn't a footprint that otherwise that could have been worse. So it's just knowing who you're giving those dollars to regardless of cost.
And I think you're right, Brooke. You know, you just have to start somewhere. And you lose sometimes. I mean, we don't control the universe, hard as we try.
Josh and Rafi, do your customers care?
Sometimes they really do. But
do they?
Yeah, sometimes. But even the ones
At
who
this level?
Yeah, some of them, and even but even them, when faced with a decision that is just an economic decision where there's no other win, they sometimes make the choice that's in their own economic interest before anything else. On the other hand, you know, we have clients who have said, you know, I'm not gonna throw that out. I'm not doing it. I'll donate it. It's great that you want to change it, but unless there's some good way to do that, I'm not making waste just for the sake of it.
What do you do with all the items that you get rid of? Do you try to recycle those things, or what happens to all that?
It depends on what it is.
First dibs.
Yeah.
A lot of
Is there a
things.
good way? Is there a
for my
good
clients.
system for this though? Is there a good something in place that's because I know that a lot of designers, I feel like I keep hearing the same question, that they just feel so bad having to get rid of so much.
Well, so this is something else that we talked about, and it goes back to the Ben Storms thing, and it talks about great local vendors. Really, I think there would be less need for waste if decisions were made thoughtfully in the first place. So a lot of the stuff that we're always throwing out isn't just because the fad has changed. Well, it is true that sometimes that happens, but frequently it's because people you don't use a lot of thought in the choices that they're making. They just kind of do without thinking. We see it a lot where we come in to see a project and we're horrified by what's there. We just sort of say, who let this get built this way? Who spent however much money it was, and that was the result? Where was the thought and the planning? And that's a big sociological question. You know, city planners ask those questions. Those are really big questions.
I think developers should be fined if they develop a project and they sell it, and within 12 months of it being sold, it's redone. They should be fined for that. You shouldn't be able to build a $30 million house without the skills of making decisions blanketly, have that huge environmental impact, and then sell it to somebody who is just going to rip it out anyway. Right. And you put in like the cheapest stone because if it's the cheapest stone and a chrome faucet, I can still get top dollar on the market, and that's all that matters.
You could make a moratorium, right? Like anything new that's built has to stay a certain percentage that way for a certain amount of time. It would destroy the developers' markets, but it would prevent people from doing that.
Would that work, Scott, as an architect? Do you think that would work?
Well, I don't know. That's probably tough to answer. I think ultimately, developers do what people are willing to pay for.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to. It goes back to your guys' comment, right? It's the person's responsibility, right? Who's buying it? Your dollar is what matters.
Yeah, I think there is. I worked on a house with a contractor developer, and I said I would only do the job if we used quality materials and brand name, like good quality brand name products that people would be aware of. So they'll be like, oh, I know that's expensive. I don't want to change that out.
Right.
And he did it. And the people that bought the house love it. They're not changing anything. They haven't changed anything.
So you sold the house, huh?
Finally, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That, oh, go ahead, Brooke.
Yeah, I think
See, there's an example of sustainability because of what you did. Even if every the products that you used weren't sustainable, you created a sustainable design in the sense that it didn't have to be ripped out by somebody.
Right.
We have a client whose family bought a significant boat that had just been redone, and they only bought it used because they wanted to do it quickly, so they didn't build from scratch. And the comment was, I don't like a faucet on the boat, we're ripping everything out. And it's their prerogative absolutely to do that. And they built a beautiful, and they employed
a lot of
people, huge amount of people across Europe, and it was wonderful. And they create entire economies because of that, which is incredible and has great merit. And that philosophy multiplied many, 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 many times is really damaging for the planet. And if all design were timeless and sustainable and nobody were ever doing anything, like very few of us would have jobs.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so that's
Yeah. So do you
There's
think
a
that kind of
balance to it.
consumption is going to change?
What was the question, Russ?
Do you think that sort of consumption with a client like that is actually going to change?
Well, there's the question, right?
I
What
don't
are
think
we
so.
what are we doing? How badly does this hurt?
I think it hurts everybody a lot, but you know, are these is it really going to change people's behaviors long term? Especially somebody like that who, you know.
Well, there are arguments, and I think Ravi's point, we've talked about it with, there are, we talked about when you were saying about the responsibility of company, when you take up an employee, you take care of their families. Like there are the impact of what they do is so much greater across the world because of that type of spending. So there are always those balances of you have to look at it from so many different markers. You can't look at the value of something from only one marker. But I think what I keep coming back to and really, really believing, and I hope more people, I see some people out there on Instagram and other people believing a similar thing, and I hope enough of us will it into existence, because I believe on the other side of this is I don't see this incredible depression. I don't see this horrible recession like 2008. I think there is so much desire to come out and to be joyful and to be hopeful and to renew and to rebuild and grow. I think, and we've never had a communal experience where we know so intimately what somebody else in a completely foreign environment to us is living in right now, and we can experience things so much more intimately together. And I think that along with the desire for beauty and growth, we're going to have our own new version of a renaissance, like what happened in Europe after the plague. And that is, we are on the birth of this. This is an incredible opportunity. So what are we going to do? What are we going to say? What voices are going to matter? What work is going to matter? What art is going to matter? And let's make that art respect the loss that we've all felt and respect the pain and part of what caused this that could have been some aspect of global warming.
Well, yeah, and human action. I think, Russ, your question is exactly it. And in some ways, I think it doesn't matter if those people don't do anything differently. The only people that need to do something differently is each one of us, right? Like but the only thing that matters is that I do something differently, that Josh does something differently, that Abby does something differently, that each one of us makes whatever those commitments are to ourselves and then sticks to them. These aren't New Year's.
But always remember, gentlemen, designers are the leaders.
Yeah.
You are the conduits. You're the spiritual core that tells this story to the market, to the people that need to hear it. This is so profound. And the discoveries that you're making right now are going to change the world. And the role that you have and your understanding of it is incredibly important. But it's your role. It's your perseverance. It's your determination. I'm in awe of what's going to happen in the next few years. I think it's going to be absolutely extraordinary. And with the new practitioners.
Yeah.
I mean, we
I just
hope
got
so.
the
I think we all need to have a lot more empathy because we're somewhat isolated in a bubble, but there's a lot of people out there who have been just affected to a degree that I don't even think we've seen it yet.
Yeah,
We're just at the precipice of it, but people that have lost their job, just think about the restaurant industry that we all frequent on a regular basis. I mean, I've had some very well-known chefs walk in the store, peddling takeout, and like 5-star chefs with tears in their eyes, just telling me that, look,
50% of the restaurants in LA and New York will be gone.
Yeah.
Bon Tom just closed.
Really?
Yes.
What did you broke up?
Bon Tom downtown just
But
closed.
just think of the ripple effect.
I mean, it's just.
So that 5-star chef is going to find something else, but just think of all the people that work for him and the growers and all the multiplier effect. I just, you think about that, and I think about that every night.
Yeah.
I mean, didn't you guys start out saying like what was the quote originally, that we're like a regenerative species? And
Resilience was the word.
Yeah, we're resilient and creative.
Yeah.
And have been.
Hi, Iris.
And yeah, I think this time is a lot about self-empowerment and just kind of looking at our own actions, and we have this like time and space to see, just as you were saying, Josh, like when we're so busy and our schedules are Tetrises of like so many meetings, we don't have time to sit back and think about, well, how did that make me feel? And, what is going to be my response to this? We're just like, going a million miles a minute, and it's impossible to maintain a sense of balance when you're that busy.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope to take out of this a sense of balance and just not feeling like I need to say yes to everything and do everything all the time, and that maintaining my own rhythm and balance is one of the most important things, because how I take care of myself is how I'm going to take care of the people that are around me.
It's about yourself, Linnea. This is what it's all about for all of us right now as we go through this incredibly empowering catharsis. It's about each of us, our own sense of self, our own empowerment that we can take with us, and all the creativity and energy and soulfulness we have, and take it to the next space. This is the solution, and this is the trajectory and the hope.
And I think we have to not only take it with us, I think we have to demand that it be. I think we have to enforce it around us, and for situations that won't bend to that, they may not be sustainable situations. They may not be sustainable realities, because, if you think of, when I think of design, I think of creativity, which requires thoughtfulness. And so frequently, we don't really get the time to be thoughtful about the thing people are hiring us to do. Mm-hmm. That seems just so insane and counterintuitive. You want to pay us to not do the thing you want us to do? I don't think that's
so good at.
Right, that's right. And when you really get the opportunity to spend time to think about how, there's a very famous actress, long time dead now, named Eleonora Duse. And she was one of the, she's in the annals of history, she's one of the greatest actresses who ever lived. And she was asked to play Lady Macbeth. And when she was asked to play it, she said, "Yes, but I'm going to need a year." And they asked her, "Why are you going to need a year?" And she said, "I'm going to need a year to decide how I want to play it." And it makes a whole lot of sense. She looked at this role that that came with gravitas, and she respected herself, and she respected the writing, and she wasn't about to come to it flippantly. So if she was going to do it, it was going to take some time for her to really think about how she wanted to do it. And in fact, it came to pass, and she delivered a legendary and, you know, really historic performance of that. But it's that thing. Now, obviously, you can't turn to your clients and say, sure, I'm going to think about this for a year, pay me that whole time. But what does that look like for each of us? And in not just our sphere, I don't think it's only about design. I think in each one of our own arenas, we've been tasked with not being thoughtful because that's how to produce. Production for the sake of production just can't continue.
I think that goes back to what you guys were saying about the time for stillness and quietness, and, you know, the time to put in deep thought into things, which I think one of the things, you know, this has taught me is just like how inefficient being busy all the time is, right? It doesn't make your work better.
Busy all the time is the deal.
I had a project that went on hold for 6 weeks, and I came back to it with like fresh eyes, and I was like, oh, this is, you know, this is how it's done. This is what we need to do. This is how we're moving forward. And I had a meeting, and it like just flowed. It was so nice to be able to take a break from the work and come back to it later with fresh eyes instead of just like pounding through it.
Well, and did you feel differently about the way you presented your ideas?
Totally. I mean, yes and no. I'm always into like meditation and being quiet and that sort of thing, but this has just been like extra deep. Yeah. So you know, I did meditate right before the meeting, which was really nice. And yeah, it's just really great to have this extra time to kind of.
I heard something really cool just last night, and it was a totally different subject matter, but along the lines of us just running around like chickens with our heads cut off, and, you know, we're not being thoughtful. We're not thinking deliberately and making the best choices when we're like that. It's also what's running in our minds. And this woman was saying that this about her body image, but she was saying she realized she probably spent about 50% of her waking thoughts thinking about her body. And she kind of had that light bulb moment and went, what is the opportunity cost here? Mm-hmm. What am I not creating because I'm thinking about this? What am I not doing? Who am I not seeing and spending time with? Because I am so overloaded with these toxic thoughts that have absolutely no substance or no productivity. And I think that's, you know, we're all kind of sitting with our thoughts a lot, and I'm becoming aware of that like, oh, I could really shift my thoughts right now and do something a lot more useful.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a difference too of like just banging out work for the sake of banging out work, which I have a really hard time with. I take probably longer than I should in designing projects, just because if I'm not feeling it, I can't sit down to do it. Like I have to really, like obviously I sit down and the, you know, ideas start flowing, but it's sort of almost like I have to let the ideas marinate and sort of, you know, grow out of the soil. It's like I don't just plant it and it's there. It's like it takes a little while to like just, you know, and it's like I feel like the projects that do feel the most thoughtful, or you see someone else's work, like, you know, that a lot of thought and a lot of energy and love went into that project. And you can see projects too where you're like, they don't give a shit.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think I think it shows in your work how you show up to do your work. So.
Don't you think some of that is, I mean, it's obviously there's always a time crunch, but there's also, I mean, at least we've seen in the US that like, you know, there's that anxiety of like, if I don't do this job, or if I don't have this job, or if I don't do this other thing, like, and I don't work for 5 minutes, then, oh, I won't be able to pay my health. I mean,
But
We have no
that's
social nets here.
too. And that's like, you have to, if you have a dialogue with your clients, like if you keep them like, this is what I'm doing, or this is what I'm thinking about this, or, like, it's like, you don't just disappear and like, oh, like, like, you don't do anything for a year and pay me. But, it's like, you have to have that dialogue with your client also of like, you're doing it as fast as you can, but you also don't like, and I'm not saying be irresponsible with people's time and money. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying like, if I have a deadline, I'm just like, whatever, I don't care. No, I mean, like, I'm just saying in the vacuum of, I have a certain amount of time that I have to do this, and I know I have to get it done, but I'm not just gonna sit there and bang it out so I can be done with it. Does that make sense?
If we're thoughtful enough about the work that we do, then I believe, wasn't it Dorothy Draper that when she came when she was asked to, I can't remember which project, but she only brought one set of boards.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, I don't bring you options because I only bring you the best. And
yeah, and if I showed it to you, it's the best choice.
And if we can come to, we kind of do that with our projects. We don't, if the time of consideration can be put in, and we do it with where the clients have a little bit of input along the way, but really the first thing they see is our design, our take on the project, and then they get a moment to interject. But very frequently, it's about bringing something that's really baked and considered and thought about. And that part of it is like the HGTV thing where clients can just, anybody can do it, or clients can, be a part of the whole thing, or should be. That became a story that we allowed to happen. That's not the origins of our industry, and that shouldn't be. That's
Frank Lloyd Wright wasn't like, how would you like me to do this? That just never happened.
And that's just, we decided at a certain point we had to decide who we want to be. And so we work a certain way, and we're upfront with clients about it from the very beginning. We give them a document about what they can expect with working with us. And if that's not for them, it's not for them. But we do really bespoke, considered work that's tailored for a client and thoughtful. And we don't want to, like Abby's saying, I'd rather be still for 5 minutes than be working to do something that feels false for a client, to bake something faster and not in that context, and to make different decisions. As scary as that may be. And I think now more than ever, to do that, to put in that consideration, go with something that you feel good about, go with something you feel strong about. That's taking us back to who the origins of our industry, how things were sold and presented, which is what it really needs to be. We are artists, we have things to say, and what we should say should be important and be beautiful, and not just a Carrara tile because it's 12 by 12 and it was cheap.
We must be adamant. We must be strong. We must have a voice, and we have to carry it forward. This is going to be our success, really, when we become strong and overcome the thing of the media and all the generational things and about magazines. It's about relationships. It's about spirituality. It's about connections. It's about education. It's about relationships with clients. And God bless you, designers, who have this incredible charge right now to lead us into the next adventure.
Well, and you've kind of brought it back to how our internal conversation prior to this, what the genesis was, and it was.
I love you.
Really, I know, of course, and it's about, it's about relationship, and our industry has thrived on it for so long, and I think strengthening those bonds and sort of doubling down on what makes us strong is what's going to make the most change and keep us alive. So buy everything only from Snyder Diamond.
There you go.
Well,
we're
only going to give you one choice from now on.
That's right.
There you go.
Let's wrap it up, guys.
The tub.
Yeah, but I do want to chime in. Russ Snyder is one of the Renaissance guys in the business right now.
I don't know who he is, the Russ Diamond.
We have like a appreciate Russ moment because we were
Yeah.
just talking
He has
about
a foot
what
in
we
the
really were.
past,
We were just
and
saying
has
how
a
easy
foot
we
in the
were.
future, and he has established himself as an incredible leader
Yep.
to invest in all the things that you boys have talked about tonight. But we're talking about soulfulness, not about product. You get product anywhere. But how do you get ideas? How do you get to creativity? How do you find relationships? How do you make things happen that you can take? Because Russ and I are in a business that we don't talk to your clients. You talk to your clients. And so we try to do our best to provide ideas, stories, narratives, things that you can take to you and to be the best that you can be.
We try.
No, you
Very well put.
Good job, Russ.
Yeah.
Thank
You're-
you, Russ.
Yes, thank you, Russ.
Thank
You're-
you, Russ.
Thank all of you. Because without you, I don't exist.
Thank you for doing this, Russ. This is so valuable. I really appreciate it.
This is special.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank
I mean,
you.
it is all about relationship, and we want to keep that connection going while we can't be hanging out. So we're going to keep it up, and we hope we see you at all of the things we put on.
Okay.
And then keep an eye on Genevieve. She's got some shit going on right now. Yeah, don't miss
Get it,
her.
you broke
Let me
up.
tell you, she's a comer. Let me tell you, in this whole dilemma right now, there's people that come. They're in the midst of any adversity. There are people who find a place and create something new.
Like
And
the
this is
Renaissance
what
you were talking about.
generational stuff like Jen is so great. This is an excitement.
Thank you, Rocky.
It is.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Rocky.
Thank you.
Thank you guys
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody, for coming.
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye. Love you.
Bye.
Love you guys.
Wait, let me get
At the AA, here we go.
a.
Aha.
Everybody
Come
wave.
on, kids. You ain't seen nothing shit till Lillian and I get this whole thing going.
Sorry, that took me.
You
Everybody.
guys actually
Bye,
had
everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Josh.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.